my name is Halcyon Prescott Alexander. I would be introducing the readers for today's proceedings. Let me start by saying welcome to Campus Literary Week, Crafting Liberated Mind Work, with that said, I know we're on a tight schedule, so let me start. I would like to introduce firstly Mr. Nick Nunez. He is a year 1 MFA in creative writing student, and he's going to do for us today some selected works from his poetry.
Thank you, Alma. So a lot of my poems are very short, so I'll get right into it. Roar and surge, how loud the dirge, enwrapped in a funeral pall. Bury the clouds, burn magnesium shrouds, crack and crush the sky. A hurricane on the frothed white waves crumbles the heavens down, thrashing the ocean to blacker blues to let the whole world drown. This is another poem. It doesn't actually have a title, but it's a half sonnet, so instead of the pentameter, it's basically just cut in half, so it's really quick. Jet streams by twilight, saffron screams cascade, shooting through violet flame-filled masquerade. Engine roars applause, flying V's between the clouds and starry jaws, theatrical, preen. The orchestra plays hollow percussion, dipping the sunlight in jade horizon. Descend the curtain, the night is certain. And this next one I wrote relatively recently, as I've just moved to Trinidad, and I live in Aranguez, so it is called Living in Aranguez. I can see a few more stars now, if I'm patient. Wade through the median of the night with your own lights off and wait for the rest to welcome them. They are always there, watching us, even in the stark and turgid days that bow heads to earth, close eyes to sweat. They are watching us because we imagine they might, so they do. The screaming family of new and faint lights may not all go dark enough, off enough, in time, to bask easy in faraway shimmers and reflected stories. But if you concentrate, they'll wink and you'll know the stars are watching you. Maybe the stars can't see for most of my night, are still writing stories of when they see me and you. I'm telling you a silly tale, hoping our minuscule legend is woven into the fabric of dream and all those dreaming, those who have dreamt and the yet to dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Our next writer is none other than Lynette Hazel. She's a year 2 MFA creative writer student, and she hails from Tobago. And we are going to hear a short story entitled 2-12-20, Jumbie Make to Walk the Road.
Tonight is a new day, but this night didn't dawn like other nights, nah? Moonlight brew rancid early o'clock, stuttering and sour, bad mind even, and time turn lively. As soon as it make evening, sun gone to bed quiet and hurry, like itself ready becoming dark. Not even a noisy splash of vermilion, pink, russet orange, and a long dark rush, while Sukunya walked up to Golden Lane from Chickalodin House. She sent message for all the elders to gather here by the silk cotton, right here where this mortar cradle deep between the roots of every silk cotton, right here under the arch of canopy, Moonlight raining through leaf and branch. Right here she bind she soul, bury she navel string, and take off she skin to put on a power she thought was she would. And the rush of first turning, the power of flame that could burn you with a cold heat. Flame to set aside the darkness. Flame tall like cane fire and rising to burn man's eyes to blindness when they see she rolling in the night. And we here watching. Here in Golden Lane where the people asphalt road swerve scared, hard pressing to avoid the silk cotton roots. Roots as deep as this silk cotton wide, overspreading the road and shading it into a sudden pool of deeper darkness. Pour me one crying mournful in the bush and frog calling, reek, reek. Minutes to midnight. Rain was falling hard whole livelong day, hard enough to put out Sukunya fire. If she was still here, ground soft, could open up easy for one burial or plenty. And we waiting. Mega moon tonight, soft dark like good chewy tulum, noiseless. Well, no artificial noise because them human, them breeders put themselves under curfew. So we win back the night that they had hostage. Only late liming and fetting and cars vavaneering like butterfly up and down road all over the night, from bull o'clock to 4 the morning. Jumbie can't even walk the road good again. Only a set of light that don't turn off from sunfall to day clean, only pressing back the dark. Not even Ladra Bless could ply she trade good. Matter of fact, too much street light, and when she do get a bounce up a man drunk and listening, light too bright, and man get more bold face and want to hike up she frock before he even ask she name. Sukunya laugh until she wheeze, bend over in she old relic of her skin like bamboo in high breeze. But then just so she start crying, easy sobbing and long eye water. She say she tired with this life. She see too much and don't do enough. And the bargain she make turn out real expensive. She weary. Out of all the elders, 2 women alone here, and still neither have not one lick of power between them to change even tomorrow's self, or make time stop, and rest the damn bones and we spirit. And we laugh, because all of we get trick and trap here. Only thing new is the fact that nobody seems to know about we again. All them set of young people born in and none don't know we name, and their parents can't even remember why the skin does prickle when current gone, and the veil they convince themselves is safety disappear. When they hear cat wailing in the dark, they're quick to dash cold water outside to chase cat from mating. They can't even remember is we jumping out to play. And we waiting too. Imagine them high spirit gathering here like it's wake, and we silent like the inside a cricket backside. We like a soup tick, brushing against this mortar grim with age, dwindling in size since the first man set blade to the tall sandbox tree, and the devil blend blood in the wood and trap Sukunya skin. Before we did outsmart ourselves and end up where devil fix we in place. Between them here roots, where we live in a forever half-life, and can't take back no form, and can't even go down to hell, rooted in spirit. Spirit rooting for release. So we wait, and wait. And finally everybody reach. A thing that we never dream was happening. Elders always worrying with each other, always striving, yet gathering now. And Sukunya asking them if they're not tired, always existing at the beck and call of some devil with a larger axe to grind with God. Nothing stirring. Not a cricket play throat or even a firefly winking away east toward Runmead. And Sukunya asking why the heck all are we choose this? And we hearing a sharp new sorrow in she voice that's skittering in the thin silence. And now it's tamarind seed and jumbie bead mixed up in a calabash she pull out from she white skirt. That and the blood from 9 leaf of St. John bush. And as she say that, she pull out a small glass vial with pink crystal, winking in jack-o'-lantern light, and empty it in the calabash. And she makes some quick steps, quicker than we ever see she move, to where she lodged the mortar and fling it inside. And she declared that it done. She done with this blasted, hellish life. She want back she debt. And she peel off she skin and fling it in the mortar. And we hear the skin sigh and start to sizzle. And meantime, everybody dressed back from the tree roots. And just so, a big breeze spring up. And this solid wood that never know axe bite, this eater and swallower of souls, we hear the bowl crack like it rip time in half, and doomsday reach. And singing like poison running backwards in my vein. We hear the crack, and we sigh like we remember the taste of ice cold water and skin, sliding down your back and seeping inside womanhood, tickling and shriveling testicles. This tree that possessed we so long an age, slants slow, like cold molasses running uphill. Then half lean as though undecided, and then pick up a mind to surrender and fall slow through all the ages it grow, and land with a booming crash, a shaking of ground and a visible echo over the valley where all other trees shiver. Silk cotton, branch them break up and leaves stunned, thick trunk twisting in last defiance. The apocalypse wasn't for horsemen, but this tree of ages toppling. It fall creaking and groaning with the weight of years, and set all our we jumbie free, bind to no one now, save we own taste. Look your dead piling up at every corner. Look at this little 7 years boy lining up, standing at the door to the incinerator waiting to feed the soft weight of the baby sling across his back to the flames, waiting to surrender his own body even. As he trembling to stand tall, look how tears pooling in his eye corners. We done infect his parents and then pass off, both struggling for breath, harsh grunting and elastic flailing of arms and legs like each body part was hearing a different music. Well, that is the new music here in 2021. Vaccinated, unvaccinated, rich, poor, have-nots, lettered and unschooled, all the same flesh darkening equally to rot. And we blowing free the breath of pestilence. We smile, and we chakalacking, laughing harder than Cocrico come day clean. Long rope for Maga Goat Man. When you think we dead, is no self we live in. Ho, ha, hi. Bye.
Thank you, Lynette. Okay, I'd like to call on Mr. Gabriel Walker. Blackman, sorry. I don't know why Walker is in my mind. Okay, so Gabriel is going to share with us some poetry, and the theme of his poems today is desire and its attendants.
Thank you. So these are 5 poems on desire and its attendants. The name of this poem is Fulgora. We knew nothing about camel toes, but the print in that enclave seemed like 2 putty-gal pegs to the most world-wise of us boys. They become a mystery we spend the rest of our lives revealing. His father would tell him while going to buy fruit. Come, the harvest is plenty. So we went, us boys, to frolic among the thorn branches, the flash, smiles through the leaves, second only to the pleasure of the fruit. Their taut sighs as we parted, their roundness twain in our fingers, leaking, easily bruised, we gorged, left full, but always wanting. This poem is called A Question and Answer. Tin and glass amid a sea of black sand, Father, where are you? South of here we are nobody. Here we are known as South, the least of which am I. Rabaka is a clink of glass bodies, Father. My childhood eyes seek you out and find sweaty faces, carnal eyes, rippling flesh. They frighten me. Here I am, son, belly swollen like dough, drunken on the hops, filled, drifting like a ghost between bodies, among bodies, finding, not yet found what I've lost, what you are losing now, in the whirlwind, in the night, brown limbs entwined, something holy. Nostalgia is where the river meets the sea. This one is called Early December. That I could then feel myself wanted, no metaphors apt for it, or fingers mapping, but no conquest, just surrender and surprise. To see old territories through new eyes, the lakes of scars of the scars of lakes alternatively. To rediscover a body is to know it twice. To rediscover a body is to prepare to lose it again. What verdant nothings whispered caught in the nest of leaves overhead. Every rustle a chorus, less victory chant than theme music. Twin sojourners resting at the water's edge, tentative feet breaking the water's surface. And this poem is after Kiora Petseki Gosetsile, which is one of my favorite poets. It's called Little Knife. All childlike tenderness and slender flesh worked to a toughness like stone. Muscles like rolling hills, scenes Schumann could find no solace in. We made sing the body. The way it sings echoes a past like whiplash to memory. The griot says that places have scars, which is to say they echo the body, which I have since learned is a feathered thing, not set free, but knowing not the concept of a cage. And that's what love is in the end. You balanced me in your hands, called me your little knife. You are the maker, and I am beautifully wrought. The blade that returns home in your stomach, opportune like a thing portended. And this poem is called Her Hands, which was selected as the second runner-up for the Prism International Literary Prize. Her hands. For a mother to bury her child is to dip her feet in sorrow. This you said decorating an empty coffin. I remember your hands. All precision and manicured cruelty gifting a knife, saying, carve away at your flesh, make of yourself something beautiful.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Gabriel. I would like to call next Miss Afisha James, my classmate. She's also a MFA Creative Writing Year 1 student. And Afisha is going to give us a little touch of her short story today.
Hi everyone. So the short story I'm going to read today is something that I would have written, recreating a story I shall usually do in my life. And the title of it is For Eternity. The job seemed simple enough. Nothing we had never done before. We would be in and out, a clean move. My entire life had been leading up to that moment. It was the way the stars had aligned. If there was breath in my lungs and a beat in my heart, I would become a victim of my circumstances, like the men before me and those after me. The old wooden house sat vacant by itself on some hill for years. being filled with only the tales told by neighbors and busybodies in passing. The most prominent of these tales being about the woman who lived there. She dabbled in works and dirtied her hands for the benefit of one person or the other. The two-story house reminded me of the fears that lived in my dreams as a child growing up. I'd always imagined what the inside would look like, filled with cobweb and dust, considering she never had visitors. The hole in the front door never invited thieves into our home either, but with her gone, I received my invitation in the mail. Who else would get the job done? It was my duty to continue the legacy left behind by my brother Chris, who had died. He was something special. His head always held high as he walked the streets of Claxton Bay, the community leader. Through my eyes, my brother was a provider. He did what he had to do to make sure that my family and I ate. He made the best out of what was handed to him by the universe we tend to put our trust in. School was never a thing to the boys in this family. What was the point? It was never something that made sense to me. From the time I was old enough to hide Christian's gun for him, I had a job. I would do it well too. Sometimes I and all never knew where it was. My older brother always had plans of breaking in and collecting the old hag valuables untouched by the public. It was on the day of his funeral, I was crying in his room, and I remembered he made me hide a box for him. The box was filled with money, weed, a small handgun, and all my dreams. Night came along, and there the moon was. She stood bravely in the sky, boastfully sure that she would outlive all of us. The trees stood tall around me, and the wind stopped blowing the minute I began to dig. I swore when I found the box that night, I heard the moon chuckle at me. I opened the box, and the gun laid there motionless, harmless. It was nothing in this little cardboard box in the middle of nowhere. I picked it up, and the power made its way through my body, almost throwing me to the ground. My hands clasped around the cold metal, feeling the imperfections of the rust on the palm of my hands. I examined the little thing. I focused on the trigger and wondered how this insignificant piece of metal could take the lives of so many, Christian included. My eyes tightened as a flashback of my brother lying in his bed in the pool of his own blood passed, and I placed the weapon back into the box and made my way home. There was too much to do and too little time to get it done. The neighborhood was quiet. Christian was dead, so their immediate threat was laid to rest. This house was the ideal place. Nobody lived there, and it remained untouched for years. Look, it was as simple as this. If I wanted to make a name for myself, if I wanted to ensure the safety of those around me, then I had to go big. And this was big. The house looked down at me that night, and only me. It was not concerned about Anon or Justin, who stood beside me. We had about 2 hours before the sun was to rise again. The best time to handle these jobs. That's what Christian said. Never let the sun rise on you. He always reminded me when we woke up at 3 in the morning. As a kid, I always wondered where he had been going. Now, I know. Countless times he would have stood in the shoes I was in that night, maybe contemplating the same thoughts I was in that moment. When we get in, we had to get out. Children of the night is what we were called. Sometimes I like to think that there's a sense of familiarity with the name, a connection even to the children of the sea. Our lives were never ours to begin with. We belong to the night and every night crawler that was born from it. We belong to every outcome that the world so graciously handed us on a platter. When the sun rose, it damaged us. It revealed the ugly, and so I live by my brother's words, and the sun never rose on me. Justin, you bring the flashlight? Anon said. We don't need light. A muffled chuckle escaped his mouth the minute I turned and looked at him. We stood outside the house, dressed in all black, bandana tied around our mouths, a look that felt familiar. For the first time, I had been in a uniform rather than having it look back at me. Let's go. He had always been the more assertive among us. He had more to lose, I guess, Anon. Having a daughter at 16 changed him. He had to grow up faster than the rest of us. Now, at 20, these changes were set in stone. Justin and I, we had big names to live up to. Justin, his father, had been in jail since we were 10 and would not be out for a long time. You typically don't get out for murder. The easiest part was getting inside. The hole in the door allowed for that. Understand that we never thought we would have had to remain quiet. I mean, the house was empty. It was meant to be vacant. It had been so for years, but the old witch always had something up her sleeve. Justin and I rummaged downstairs, but Anon made his way up the creaking steps. I followed. Hurry up, what you afraid of, the dead? I let out a laugh behind his words. Anon looked back at us. Shut up. Or what? We will wake the dead? The both of us laughed at him as we made our way up the stairs. With those words, a loud thud came from upstairs, and we all stopped in our tracks. Anon placed his finger over his lips and continued to slowly move up the steps. I followed behind, and Justin stayed down. The energy in the house shifted, and the air became almost unbreathable. The stairs creaked under my feet, and Anon's light lit the way ahead of us. On the second story, we were not alone. Thoughts flooded my overworked mind. I took in a deep, hot breath at the top of the stairs, and Anon and I went in separate directions. I slowly took the gun out of my waist and held it low, crawling around the dark corner. I went to the hag's bedroom. Yes, I whispered to myself, her jewelry, all laid out on the bed, her clothes, all laid out around the room. We were not alone. This had to be done quick. We had to get out of there. I pulled a plastic bag out of my back pocket and began filling it. I scanned the room. The lace bed sheets covered the entire queen-size bed perfectly. The self-portraits on the wall showed the aged woman in detail, from small plaits to the top of her head to the singular black mole above her lip with a piece of hair coming out of it. These motivated my actions. I walked around the old room and made sure I left nothing behind. There was a ring, placed on a dresser, a wedding band it seemed like. I picked it up and slowly looked at it. There was something inscribed on the inside, eternity. Christian flashed in my mind again. He wore a band on his index finger. Originally, it was not his. It was from the first robbery. I looked up to my brother, but a wedding band seemed sacred. After picking up the ring, I placed it back down because I was not going to interfere with eternity. David, what jewelry you got? I looked at him. All, well, except for the wedding ring. He looked at me and furrowed his eyebrows. With a huff, he started back up the stairs, running towards the room, picking up the ring. Christian never left anything behind. He always knew exactly how to gain my attention. He knew that my brother was a soft spot and I would do anything to live up to his legacy, just like he would to please his father. Fine, but make it quick. Justin's words stung my ego and caused me to follow behind him. Anon left to go get the car, and the two of us made our way up the stairs. I took the lead to go into the bedroom. Everything was in the same place as I left it, everywhere. But one thing had changed. Someone came in here after us. It had to be. The ring was not where I left it. I turned to Justin. Just be careful, because my words were cut short and there was a piercing pain in my back. I opened my eyes. I tried to reach the pain, but my body eventually gave out. I laid there on the ground, stomach first. The only thought that crossed my mind was Christian, laying in his bed in his own blood. I remember him coughing while the officers ran out of the front door, leaving my mother screaming.
Thank you, official. I'd now like to call on Tristan Walker, who hails from Enterprise. He's a local writer. He actually is reading an excerpt from his published book, Another Last Chance.
Good day, everybody. Well, I'm Tristan Walker, author of 2 crime fiction novels, Another Last Chance and Creative Justice. The latter will be published on the 22nd of May, 2024. I'll start with the synopsis of Another Last Chance. Kevin Jones is on the run from corrupt cops and a drug gang. After spending several months in the company of a friend who hustled drugs, Kevin had decided to cut ties with the crew to ensure a crime-free future for his girlfriend and their unborn child. But he makes the mistake of one last line, and on that fateful night, He is almost beaten to death by members of his past rival and finds himself seeking refuge at an operational base in the Brussels Echo Forest that is being guarded by police officers and soldiers. Upon realizing that the officers are part of a major drug trade, Kevin escaped their deadly intention and is being set up. Now he has to survive long enough to prove his innocence. So that was the synopsis, and I'll start to read from chapter 1. The alarm went off at 11:30 p.m., and Kevin jumped up. Beside him on the couch, Chantal stirred but did not awake. They had both fallen asleep on the couch watching a movie. Kevin pulled on his jersey and headed for the bedroom to start getting ready for the party. He had set the alarm a bit too late since the guys had made plans to meet at midnight. He moved from room to room, trying his best to remain quiet, but as he was sitting on the bed, pulling on his socks, Chantal appeared at the bedroom door. Her normally cheerful face was expressionless, which meant she was angry. He got up and started combing his hair. His back was towards her, but he saw her watching him, still expressionless in the mirror. "What now, babe?" he said, turning. "So, you mean to tell me you're still going out, no matter how I feel about it?" He shook his head. "Babe, you being serious right now?" "Yeah, why not?" she said, raising her voice. "If you're too blind to see that these fellas are not your friends, that is what I'm here for." Kevin sat down on the edge of the bed and laced his shoes. Then he stood up and walked across the room and looked at himself in the mirror again. He liked the way he had coordinated the colors with his red polo jersey, blue jeans, and white sneakers. He contemplated whether to keep his gold chain inside or out and then tucked it under his jersey so he would draw less attention when he reached the club. He then turned and faced her again. She looked at him. "Babe, why you always have to be worrying so much? I'm not even worried." He walked over to her. "What happened last time is in the past. We don't get over that long time." "Yeah, but nothing," he said. "Stop worrying about Biggs and them boys. Let me worry about that." He was right after her, looking straight into her face, trying to convince her that everything was going to be okay. At least, if he said it enough, he too would also believe it. "Babe, you're not seeing the point," she said and attempted to walk away, but he held her hand. "What is the point then, Chantal? You tell me." She delayed a few seconds before answering. "You know this down here, babe, and just the thought of something happening to you bothering me so much. Almost 2 weeks gone and everything going so good. I just don't understand why you feel you have to meet back with him tonight." He released his grip and passed his hand across his face. "Babe, I explained to you so much time that I only go in because it's Sean's birthday line, and we had planned this way before anything that even happened. This is the last time I go out with him. I done tell Steve that already." She held him in the gaze for a few seconds. "Babe," her voice was low, "I just have a feeling something bad going to happen." He gently lifted her chin and looked into her eyes. "Chantal, babe, stop worrying about it, please. You're just being paranoid. Nothing going to happen, okay? I could guarantee you that." The moment passed in silence. "Yeah, okay, I hear you." She pulled away and shook her head and walked back into the living room, carefully lowering her body onto the couch. "You know what? You go ahead and do your thing," she said, but her tone wasn't angry now, just sad. Kevin looked at her and he couldn't help but put himself in her position. He could understand what she was going through. 2 weeks ago, Steve had taken him along with their friends, Wendell, Sean, and Marcus, on what he claimed was a drug pickup location. But instead of collecting, he had stolen 2 kilos of drugs from a well-known drug pusher from Marino, while Sean and Kevin remained in the car. They were both upset about what he had done, and Kevin told Steve that he didn't want to be linked to them anymore. Sean had also decided to distance himself from the crew after the party tonight. "Babe," Kevin said. Chantal ignored him. "Baby," he said, but she continued looking at the frozen image on the TV. He began caressing her shoulders, then went around the couch and got down on his knees as if he was finally ready to propose. But then they were both distracted as the headlights from a car brightened the front window and loud gangster music filled the night air. No later than the car had stopped than the horn blew twice. The music and voices were sounding clear. They both knew who it was. Chantal gave him a long, hard stare, which was meant to be her final warning. but he simply smiled, got up, and headed to the door, grabbing a Miami Heat jacket and Sean's gift on the way. Kevin, she said, you're forgetting something? He hurried back, kissing her on her lips, and then placing his hand gently on her stomach. He could feel the baby pushing against his hand. Their eyes met again, and he brushed his hand across her stomach. Daddy coming back in a little while, okay, honey? They both got another kiss, and he went smiling all the way to the door. Outside was cold and dark, although many of the neighbors' lights were on, and, as far as his eyes could see, there wasn't anyone walking in the streetlights. There were only a few cars speeding by as usual. As he got closer to the car, he could see smoke escaping through an open window, and he smelled the weed even before he came close. But thankfully, Chantal hadn't come to the door. Kevin pulled open the back door of the car and sat down, and Marcus immediately stuck a half bottle of Hennessy into his hands. Kevin looked to the house, and he could see Chantal standing at the door now. That's it.
Lastly, I would like to call Dr. Moody Amai, who needs no introduction, but I will say that as a Year 1 MFA creative writing student, I don't think any of us would have known how to navigate without Dr. Amai's guidance.
Good afternoon. The woman who swallowed herself. Ezreen had been swallowing herself since the day she was born. On that high double bed in that tiny apartment, from the minute her head squeezed past those clenched thighs. One large ball and her dad had bellowed louder. I'm not putting up with that noise, so you can stop that right now. Obviously, Ezreen didn't remember that, and it was only the stories from Granny and Mum that made it real. Unfortunately, it was an unverifiable story because Dad had been locked up in strange ways when she was 3 and then deported back to that no-good place. Apparently, he'd committed an unspeakable act that was referred to with pursed lips and eyes that squinted and moved downwards as eyebrows raised to hairlines. Good riddance is all Granny ever said, with such fierceness that even if Mum had thought differently, she wouldn't have dared say so. Ezreen learned to swallow more of herself whenever they were out on the lane and people would ask Mum, "Is she yours?" And Mum would squeeze her hand hard as she answered yes, through lips clenched as hard as her thighs. Belonging to Mum became associated with pain from an early age. But as time moved on, Ezreen found that if she relaxed her throat, she could swallow much more, much faster, until she didn't even notice she was doing it anymore. The only time Ezreen felt free was in the pages of a book, from Enid Blyton to Catherine Cookson to all the Mills and Boones. The freedom she found in those lives, in those pages, made up for all the swallowing she had to do, almost. When she met her husband, she was in a Danielle Steele phase, and he fit the villain so perfectly. Those first 6 weeks before he turned up on her doorstep with 2 plastic bags and a music system, Ezreen floated through days, making home, making love, making room. She didn't notice the extra work at first, the cleaning, the washing, not the cooking, because he decided that he would do it and she would clean up after him. The first time she questioned him about it and he snarled at her, she remembered how to swallow. When the silent days of rebuke turned into silent weeks of rebuke, she swallowed harder. The sweet relief when her punishment was over and he reached for her in bed and silenced her protests with kisses. She would forget how to swallow for the sweet nectar weeks that followed, but there was always a craw in her throat when he was displeased with something, anything, nothing. But her training from birth had prepared her for this marathon. It didn't faze her at all. Work was a place of release. Laughs and jokes with work buddies, extreme sports and gossip, a whole novel in itself that took her away from the pain of swallowing. Occasionally, she even found that she coughed parts up. A tonsil here, a piece of thigh there. Life was good. Until it wasn't. And she woke up that day in October and something felt different. She hadn't needed to swallow anything for a few weeks. He'd been his best self, busy with his family and his younger brother who was getting married. That could be us, he whispered as she crawled into bed more tired than usual, because he'd decided to cook a lasagna that had somehow used every piece of pot and crockery in the kitchen. And there was the jar of sauce that had been dropped on the floor and splattered up the walls. It looked as though a murder had taken place. He'd sent her out to the shops for a next jar before she could clean it up. By the time she got back, it had started to dry and harden, and she had to scrub and clean every speck. And still, there were rust stains like an old crime scene that could lose her the house deposit. Imagine, we could get married and have a big party for all my friends. Ezrin murmured something indistinguishable as he took her shoulder and rolled her on her back and expertly rolled himself onto her. She thought she'd only just gone back on the pill and they had to be careful. But he pinned her arms above her head and shushed her, and all the bits of herself she'd coughed up rushed back down her throat, along with 2 ribs, part of her sternum, and the right side of her pelvis. The morning gave her a heaviness that she hadn't felt before, and a tightness that held her body together in a way that made her feel grateful. 5 weeks later, there was no doubt that she was pregnant, and she knew there was not enough room inside of her for a baby, along with all the parts of herself she'd swallowed over the years. Ezrin fought a silent battle between what she wanted and what she had. For the first time since forever, his silent rebuke for some random misdemeanour only lasted 1 day. Ezrin hadn't taken any notice of it until it stopped, and only realised it had happened when she saw his slitted eyes looking at her as though he didn't know who she was. That should have been enough for her to cough up some bits of herself, but she was weary with her battle and had missed the opportunity. She still hadn't told him as she wasn't sure what to do. The decision was taken away from her a week later when she rushed to the bathroom and her body rejected itself. Parts of her were upchucked into the toilet, parts that she hadn't seen since childhood shot into the bowl, followed by a low growl that threatened to become high-pitched, like a newborn baby's cry. When she'd finished, she swilled her mouth. She opened the door to find him standing there with a big grin on his face. I knew it. I bloody knew it. With that, he turned and ran down the stairs, whooping. Ezrin didn't have the energy to re-swallow any parts of herself, and anyway, her throat and insides were too tender. Nausea became her best friend over the next few weeks. Nothing was going down, but plenty was coming up. Part of her liver, an ovary, pity she hadn't swallowed both when she had the chance, her appendix, the heel of her left foot. She was becoming heavier by the day. She'd never known the weight of carrying her full body around, and it was getting very close to full. He didn't seem to notice. After the initial joy of sharing his news with his brother, he became close to uninterested. Somehow, Ezrin was still dragging herself to work every day. The bathroom mirror showed her sallow skin and the dark circles under her eyes. She didn't notice the concerned looks that went between Patty on reception and Joe the secretary. From her desk to the bathroom was all she knew about, until there was an intervention in the lunchroom. What's going on, Ez? You're nearly as white as me, and them panda eyes ain't really in just now. Patty took the first step. Is he hitting you? You can tell us. We can help you. Joe didn't dance around the garden, straight in with what they were actually thinking. Ezrin looked from one to the other and started to laugh. Well, her mouth did. The sound was dry and raw and spilled out of her mouth haphazardly. Pregnant was all she managed to utter between gasps. Patty and Joe grinned as they breathed a collective sigh of relief. Oh, geez, why didn't you say, girl? Patty liked to drop some ghetto speech now and then. Oh my God, that's awesome. You need some ginger tea. I've got some tea bags in my desk. My mum swears by them for morning sickness. and ginger nuts, McVitie's, and crackers dry. Patty also had remedies on hand for just such an occasion. Ezrine started to swallow. She swallowed so hard she couldn't stop. Her left shoulder, her spleen, part of her liver, again. She swallowed until her mouth started to fill with water and bile, and she shot up and ran out to the bathroom. Her stomach was not having any of it. There was no room inside of her. She had to throw it all back out. She slumped on the floor, head against the door, and closed her eyes. It was becoming all too real, and now that people knew, there was nothing she could do. She had to go through with it.
Okay, this brings us to the end of today's lunchtime session. I hope it was enjoyable for you all as it was for me. Tomorrow we have online sessions, reading sessions, so be sure to click the link on those. And we're back here on Wednesday at 12 for the in-person sessions. Thank you.